So, in this video, I'm going to break down to you guys the easiest way you can possibly make money in 2026. Now, to give you guys a great understanding, I've done pretty much every single business model you could think of. I've tried trading, I've tried drop shipping, I've tried FBA. There's not a single model I've not tried. I've even ran a whole SMMA agency, AI agency to 42K a month. And I can proudly say that this is probably one of the easiest model that I'm doing right now at the moment. Now, the model is called pay per call, where you sell essentially phone calls. Now, it may sound kind of weird or something you probably have not heard of because it's something that's not really out there. It's something that's not really out there on YouTube. It's not really out there in the space known. And essentially, this is honestly probably the simplest thing you can ever do for you to actually make money. I completely ditched my 42K a month SMMA for me to go ahead and pursue this full time. And I have a whole software essentially all behind this whole model where essentially people can go on there and buy calls. Now, to give you a brief understanding exactly what it is, this is exactly how pay per call works. There's a publisher and there's a broker and there's a buyer. And as you can guess, you are the broker. Now, it may not look like, you're not making as much money because your profit says $25, right? Now, before I even get into the profit analysis or how you're actually gonna make a few $1,000s a day, XYZ and XYZ, is you need to understand how all three parts actually work. So there's someone called a publisher. It's someone or a whole team or a company. These are the people that are essentially generating phone calls with ads, with there's a like Google ads. Essentially, he's the one that's generating the phone calls. So you're not running any ads, you're not spending your time trying to build funnels, you're not, spending 5 hours a week on checking calls. Trust me, I was there. Like I understand that. I understand all that work. You're not doing any of that. All you are doing as a broker is you're essentially connecting the publisher and the buyer together. That's all you're doing. It's literally that simple. Now, you may be asking yourself now, okay, like how do I make money, right? Like how do I make money in this model? How does this work? Well, it's very simple. You find a buyer that wants to buy your calls. And the good thing about the buyers, the people that are buying your calls, these are not just, a brick and mortar landscaper or a restaurant, or what's a good example, or a tire shop. You're selling calls to big companies that spend millions and millions and millions of dollars every single month on leads and phone calls. That's exactly how pay per call works itself. And that's why there's so much money in here. Now, a publisher, you get to call 35 bucks, and you call $60 to a buyer. A buyer could be an insurance broker, insurance agency, in final expense, ACA, or Medicare. There's so many niches. I'll get into that in just a second. But essentially, let's say, for example, you're selling 50 calls a day, right? That's honestly nothing, right? That's not that many calls a day. You're selling 50 calls a day with an average profit of, let's say, $20, right? You can do the math there. That's $1,000 every single day that you're getting paid. And all you are doing is essentially just getting calls from the publisher and then you're sending it to the buyer. There's not really any cost on your end. The only cost that you have is going to be your call tracking cost. So initially, for you to start a pay per call empire, there's only four things you need. Actually, only three things. My fault. You need a publisher, you need a call tracking software, and you need a buyer. That's all you need. Now you may be asking now, okay, like you do have to buy these calls up front, and what if this guy doesn't pay? Well, this is the great thing about you working with publishers. This is kind of why I love this. Is that 95% of publishers you work with, you will work with them on a payment term. Now, what a payment term is exactly, it's essentially a good way to put it, like the average, average, like a standard is going to be weekly net 7. That's the average term when it comes to pay per call. So basically, what that means is that a publisher will send you calls for a whole week, right? So let's say from Monday all the way to Saturday or Monday to Friday, he will send you a total of, let's say, 100 calls, right? 100 calls went billable. and you obviously got paid by the buyer up front, or you got paid as you go, depending how you want to do the model, essentially. But let's so now from Monday all the way to Saturday, you got calls, you send calls to your buyer, but you have not paid your publisher yet, but you got paid. So essentially, you pay the publisher when you get money from the buyer. So essentially, the buyer pays you for those 100 calls. You take that money, you pay a publisher out when he sends you an invoice. And how Weekly Net 7 works is that he will send you an invoice on, let's say, on Sunday or on that Monday, and you have a net 7. A net 7 means you have 7 days to go ahead and cover that invoice itself, essentially. That's essentially exactly how that works. And it's essentially very simple. Now, niches that you can get into, like, popular niches are on pay per call. And honestly, I recommend to get into any type of insurance niche or big home service niche. And I kind of explain to you guys why. For example, I'm in final expense, and right now I'm expanding to healthcare, basically health insurance and Medicare and auto all at the same time. Those are going to be the four niches that I want to take over this year. But to give you guys my own experience in final expense, right now we're doing a decent amount of volume every single day. We're selling a good chunk amount of calls every single day um, on our software. If you want to see what the software looks like, you can go ahead and you can go check it out yourself. It's trueringleads.com. Just so you can kind of see that I actually, I do preach what I do. But essentially, popular niches is going to be final expense, Medicare, roofing, and solar, all these niches. Now, what all of these niches have in common is that they all have one thing in common is that these are companies that rely on leads and calls for them to survive. A roofing company with no leads, they don't make any money. Now, a final expense agency with no leads, they do not make any money at all. Now, a Medicare agency with no leads or calls, they don't make a single dollar. So essentially, if he buys your leads and he likes your leads, he's going to keep buying them because if he doesn't buy them, he is not going to make any money, right? I hope you guys understand that. So when you find a buyer, right, you will you will keep making money on that campaign essentially for a very long time. Now, a question that you may be asking now is, well, okay, like I get it, like I understand now, like a publisher and a buyer. Now, probably asking yourself, like, where do I find these calls? Like, where do I find these publishers and things like that? Now, honestly, finding a publisher is not the hard part, right? I'll say the hardest part you have is finding a buyer. But even that, it's not really that hard. For you to find a publisher, they're pretty much everywhere. You can go online and look up pay per call on like pay per call networks. I can refer you guys to a bunch of them. But also, it's you building connections. Now, why pay per call works so good is when you can make a connection with a buyer or publisher, it's like it's not just it's not only like a transactional thing. It's like I'm not like friends, but I'm very good friends with essentially all my publishers because obviously they are the backbone of my whole company, you know. But it's not just about that, it's that they're actual human beings. And also my buyers, we keep a close relationship with all of my buyers. I talk to all my buyers, I talk to every single buyer that buys, every single agency owner that we talk to, like it's like a relationship. A good example. Last week, I onboarded a whole new buyer onto a whole network. He paid us 5K up front for calls essentially. And essentially he's gonna be buying 5K worth of calls every single week. And he's planning on scaling that to $20,000 a week in calls by essentially he said by the end of this month, as long as quality goes good. But I know the quality will be good because I know where he's buying calls from right now, and I know they're absolute shit. That's exactly why he's buying my calls right now at the moment. Now, essentially, um, building a connection with a publisher will always be great because then when you have that connection with that publisher, because the actually like the best thing about that publisher is that he probably does other things, right? And also having good connection with a buyer is that he will also refer you to other people that are also buying calls, right? In other niches. Like for example, the same buyer that I closed that I was talking about right now, it's the same buyer that wants to buy ACA calls from me now. Even though I don't really know much about the ACA space, right? I don't have a single buyer in ACA. he's going to be my first buyer, and he's when I initiated saying, "Hey, you also saw ACA calls?" I was like, "Yeah." Boom, right there, got that AC. Like now, I essentially have an ACA buyer and a final expense buyer, and the final expense buyer is planning on spending 20K a month. I mean, 20K a week. Yeah, that's 20K a week on calls. Now, if he buys ACA call, that's a buyer that I have just one buyer. I should be printing about 35K a week off him if everything goes well. And I know everything's going to go well, right? They had the first day today, and everything went great. Everything went amazing. Actually, as we're speaking right now, I actually just got a payment for someone that just added credits into our system to buy calls for tomorrow of $371, right? Like I just sit here and I just collect money from I just collect money from the buyers. Everything's connected on my system. They just go ahead and take calls, right? Simple. I honestly, I love it. But and the and I guess talking back to relationships is I also remember I have great relationships with my publishers. Now a publisher, he doesn't only run one campaign, right? That's not all a publisher does, right? I'm gonna go back to the webcam now. But a publisher, he doesn't only run final expense. Because obviously, remember, publisher is also in this to make money, right? So there's a whole like all those niches I was talking to you about, there's a high chance that he probably runs offers in every single one of those niches that you're talking about. So having a great connection with that publisher, right? Let's say, for example, I find a buyer now in Medicare, right? This guy said he wants calls. I just go back to my publisher. Hey, I know you have Medicare calls. How much you sell them at? He sells them at, let's say, $20 a call at XYZ amount of buffer, right? I'll go to my buyer. And then, for example, let's say my buyer is already buying calls. Find out how much he's paying per call. And then, boom, I try to beat it. But also, how you can actually make a lot more from your buyers is remember, a buyer he cares about making money, right? But obviously, him buying your calls is not making money. What like him making money is him closing policies. So I'll figure out what calls they're buying. What is the CPA? A CPA is cost per acquisition. Okay, let's say his acquisition cost in final expense is $220 right now, right? And it's paying, let's say, let's do the math right here. I'm gonna do the math over here just so you guys can understand. So let's say 220 CPA, and it's paying about $55 a call, right? So basically means every four calls he takes, he's closing one policy, just one. So every four calls, he closes one policy. Now, if we do the math, right, every four calls, he closes one policy. Now, let's say, for example, I send him calls where essentially every three calls, he will close one policy, right? So if I go ahead and say, okay, now CPA would be 210 divided by three, I can charge him $70 per call, and he will be completely fine with that. He will be completely fine with that because one, I'm beating his CPA, right? Yes, he's paying more per call, but I'm beating him on the CPA wise. That's all he cares about. All he really cares about is obviously not paying as much money and getting as much back into his bank account. That's what that matters. Now you're probably asking, now where the fuck do I find these buyers, right? These buyers that you're talking about, you kind of show how to get a publisher. It's building connections on LinkedIn. They're all over network. Like there's so many publishers. Like I mean, I'm connected to a bunch of publishers now, obviously, but I've been in the game for a while now. But essentially, for buyer, um, how to find buyers, LinkedIn outreach. Like there's so many of them on LinkedIn. Like there's so many buyers on LinkedIn. You guys don't understand. There's so many buyers on LinkedIn that it's honestly so easy to find there. Right? Depends on your niche. There's a lot of ways you can do it. Right? There's a lot of ways you can get buyers, especially in insurance. They're all over LinkedIn. Another way is running ads. You can run ads that are very low budget. DM ads is what I ran exactly for my company to get my first few buyers in, and from there it's all a snowball effect because as I said, when you have good calls, people just get referred to you. But I still run ads to this day. But essentially, you can go out on LinkedIn, you can run ads, you can do outreach. There's like, especially, let's say, for example, if you're in home service, you can cold call. Honestly, you can walk up to, let's say, for example, if I was doing home service and I plan on going to home service, this is gonna be the first thing I do. I'm gonna go ahead and go on Google Maps, look up the first roofing company, go ahead and drive to their HQ. I'm gonna drive to their HQ, and the reason why is because remember, guys, 99%, like most people are used to buying leads, like cold, like a name and a phone number and an email, maybe an address. That's what most companies are used to buying, right? Like most of you guys probably right now probably watching like, what the fuck is paper? Like calls, you can sell phone calls. Yes, you can. So if I showed up to a roofing company and say, hey, I know you're buying leads right now. What if I were to tell you I have phone calls? I have people that can call you, like people that are calling you for your service, right? You don't have to call leads anymore. You don't have to chase all these dead ass leads every single day, have to do a whole follow up system. I'm just going to send you a phone call and you're only going to pay me if they're qualified. Because remember, a publisher's only going to get paid if the call is qualified. So I can do the same deal with my buyer. You're only going to pay me if the call is qualified. That's it, right? If the call's not qualified, you don't pay. How I want to think, how easy and enticing does that offer sound? Why does it print? Because it's so easy to say yes to, and it's something that has a high LTV where people actually buy for a long time. So this is how you can generally print thousands of dollars every single day. And this is generally if you really want to build an actual company, right? If you want to build an actual company, something that actually has value and you can actually exit with, you want to build a paper call, like a paper call empire. That's what you want to do. Because 99% of people right now are telling you online on YouTube, building AI ANT, AI this, job shipping, right? Those are just, companies you can just launch and get cash, right? It's great. To be honest, it's great. I love it. Like I ran my SMA, you get a bunch of cash in there. To be honest, I'm grateful. I made a lot of money with that, but essentially I'm making more now. It's just because this is a better offer. That's one. Number two, it has a lot more value. Like I saw something with a lot more value and it's easier to get into. And number three, there's actual exit value. I see myself exiting this in about in 2 years or so. I want to build $1 million a month empire. That's my whole goal by the end of the year, to hit $1 million a month. So I can actually go ahead and exit this and actually make a shit ton of money. Because that's, all of us here want to make a lot of money. That's kind of why we all wake up every single day. It's kind of why we go on YouTube try and learn stuff. But if you find this valuable, go to join me, go to subscribe to my channel. I appreciate watching this video. But if you guys have any questions, you can go in the comment down below and I'll make sure to answer to you guys. See you guys tomorrow. It is currently 10:41 p.m. I am PST time, so I've been up on this desk since 7 a.m. This is my last thing I have to do. I wanted to record a video for you guys, but it's time to go and head to sleep. We gotta wake up tomorrow at 6 a.m. and let's go and get to work.